Good morning, everyone. My name is Deborah, and I'm here to educate you all on emotional and psychological abuse. Emotional and psychological abuse is one of the most overlooked forms of child abuse, yet it can be as damaging as physical abuse or even sexual abuse. Emotional abuse has the ability to affect a child's mental health, a child's sense of self, and ability to form relationships later in life. Before we go deeper into this, I would like to define what emotional and psychological abuse is all about. Emotional and psychological abuse involves a pattern of behavior by a parent, a caregiver, or a guardian to harm a child's emotional development and sense of self. It can also be seen as a deliberate or repeated patterns of behavior by an adult to cause a child emotional distress. Emotional and psychological abuse can exist in so many different forms, and one of these forms include constant humiliation and hostility. When you call your child names or you constantly embarrass them in public, you have emotionally abused that child. When you make that child feel unwanted, make them feel unloved, or even make them feel useless, you have emotionally abused that child. When you constantly isolate them from social interactions, you have emotionally abused that child. When you take them away from supportive environments, you have emotionally abused that child. When you manipulate or gaslight your child into thinking that they are your problems or they are the reason why you're unhappy, you have caused that child emotional distress. When you scare a child to control their behavior, you have emotionally abused that child. When you withhold love, attention, or even affection, you have emotionally abused that child. When you threaten to leave that child, or you're saying that, oh, if you don't do this, I'm going to leave you, I'm going to dump you, you have emotionally abused that child. When you prevent that child from making solid friendships, you have emotionally abused that child. When you force that child to take on adult responsibility, you have emotionally abused that child. When you act like your child doesn't exist, you have emotionally abused that child. When you make the child doubt their reality, you have emotionally abused that child. When you make that child feel worthless or undermining that child's intellectual ability or even physical abilities, you are causing that child emotional distress. The worst part about emotional abuse is that it often goes undetected, minimized, or even dismissed by the abusers, the victims, or even the people around them. And in the long run, they begin to accept abusive behaviors as something normal because this is something that they are used to, and they are not aware that they may have not been emotionally abused. And just when you think that emotional abuse has no effect on a child, it does has an effect. And one of these effects include low self-esteem and self-doubt, difficulty trusting others, self-isolation and aggressive behaviors, tendency to engage in substance abuse later in the future. Here are signs to know that a person has been emotionally abused or a person has gone through emotional abuse. Number one, a person constantly apologizes, like even if he or she is not at fault, he or she would constantly apologize for a problem. Such an individual will also have this feeling of not being good enough in situations where they know they are more than capable. Such an individual will have strong reaction to criticism, like when someone scolds them or when someone like shuns behavior, they have a very strong reaction to criticism. Such an individual would also possess people pleasing behaviors or even withdrawn behaviors, like they tend to withdraw from people easily. They have difficulty expressing their emotions, like whenever there's a problem or whenever it requires such an individual to speak up, or whenever such an individual don't feel comfortable about a particular problem, such an individual will find it difficult to express or even speak up about how they feel at the moment. They would rather take it out or wait for it to subside, and then they'll keep on hovering around it. Just to tell you that such an individual has been emotionally abused. When you see an emotionally abused person, you can offer help to them by paying keen attention to them or even listening to them without judgment. Don't dismiss them. Create a safe space for them. Validate their feelings. Always let them know that their feelings are real and valid. Advise them to seek therapy. At times when traumatic experiences are discussed, it can help them open up and unravel things that they've buried even in their unconscious, and help them heal and move on from such traumatic experiences. Also, build their self-worth. Encourage positive activities like affirmations and activities that boost their self-confidence. Help them set boundaries. Help them learn when to say no, even to toxic relationships or to toxic people. Help them set boundaries. Promote healthy relationships. Support them in forming relationships with people who actually care for them and actually see them as humans. So what can we do as a community to stop emotional abuse? We can train guardians and caregivers to recognize emotional abuse patterns and stop them when necessary. We can also raise awareness in schools, communities, churches, or even public places, just anywhere around you, to ensure that when you see emotional abuse, you stop it immediately. We can also create safe support systems for children, or even reporting systems for children, so that whenever they feel they have been abused emotionally, they report such scenarios. We should also reduce stigma around mental health support. It's not easy if you've dealt with things in the past or even in the present. The least you could do is offer assistance, create a safe environment for them, and always remind them that they are loved, they are valued, and they are respected. When you see emotional abuse patterns today, say something and to stop it. It can be you, it can be your child, it can be your next door neighbor, it can be your friend. Let us stop emotional abuse today.